EU threatens force against countries refusing migrants. That's right. The EU says if you don't let the Muslim invaders come in, 80+% military-aged men will use force. They already are threatening $1 million to 100,000, 100,000 to €1 million fine if you don't accept military-aged men into your country, who all seem to have their own Facebook accounts bragging about how many people they killed, sometimes posing with dead bodies or women they've captured who they're selling into slavery.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live again. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday edition. I want to, right out of the gates here, before I get into the latest situation with the deep state trying to kill the recovery and take Donald Trump out of office and then federalize the elections. We'll never really have another free election again after that. Before I do that, I wanted to just play this clip again. I don't normally play clips 2 days in a row, but the president talking about the Democrats obstructing our recovery, really out to get us, and the fact that they are really engaged in treason. Because it's one thing to have your political views. It's another thing to try to overthrow the American system and have a revolution against it and bring in the failed system that all these other countries have had, but that helps the elites that crave total control. The people that want cults of power. So here is the president.
But I said you have the lowest black unemployment in the history of our country. It was like, it was a game. You know, they play games. They were told, don't even make a facial movement. And I'm talking about, you have the lowest Hispanic unemployment in the history of our country. This isn't me saying, this is the charts, the polls. We have the lowest in the history of our country. Dead silence, not a smile. In fact, there was one guy, when I said the lowest African-American unemployment, he was sort of clapping, like, who was that guy? He's a nice guy. I think he was a reverend. And he was, I wouldn't say it was exactly arousing, but he was putting his hands together. And I want to find out who he is. I'm going to send him a letter of thank you. And he was probably severely reprimanded. Don't you think, Rob? I think so, because he was the only one. So that means they would rather see Trump do badly, okay, than our country do well. That's what it means. It's very selfish. And it got to a point where I really didn't even want to look too much during the speech over to that side, because honestly, it was bad energy. No, it was bad energy. You're up there, you've got half the room going totally crazy, wild. They loved everything. They want to do something great for our country. And you have the other side, even on positive news, really positive news like that, they were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not? You know, can we call that treason? Why not? I mean, they certainly didn't love our country very much. But you look at that, and it's really very, very sad. So we have to keep it going, because this country is turning, and it's turning much faster. And I said I'm going to do it, but it's happening faster than I thought.
And they are really, really angry. And I can feel their anger that they don't have this country in a total stranglehold anymore. Speaking of stranglehold, before I get into the latest FBI fiasco, we'll get into the Dow Jones. It's up 200 points today. The Democrats are trying to force a vote on the Dreamers. They want total capitulation, completely wide open borders, with the State Department under the control of the United Nations, as it already was until Obama got out of office. They want that system set back up. They want to basically have the U.S. under the UN's refugee control system, where it was dictating to the State Department who was let in, and it was vetting who could be let in, including people on Interpol terror watch list. Because remember, in Sweden and Germany and France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, but particularly in the United Kingdom, it's been back in the news this week, they are bringing in hundreds. It was 400 just last month, the British news is reporting. 400 plus former jihad fighters who'd invaded Syria, and they're now coming back into England because they either previously lived there or are being allowed in, even though they are admitted ISIS members, and they're being given free housing and welfare and all these goodies. Paul Watson covered this yesterday. And pensioners are being thrown out of their government housing and being told to move in with their children to make room. And they are doing all sorts of other horrible things. And, of course, that's a whole nother report on 400 British ISIS jihadists returning. There's a whole other article about 400 plus, just completely unvetted, many of which are ISIS fighters. That's a whole separate headline they found. Wow, just so many, I can't even keep track of it anymore. So it just shows the total commitment to destroy the West and make it unlivable. So speaking of tyranny and speaking of treason, aren't you glad you don't live under the unelected European Union that no one knows how it just appeared? Well, actually, we do, but the general public doesn't in the UK or Europe. They're learning about it thanks to independence parties that are taking over. In 1947, they had the Treaty of London that agreed to steel concessions and for a treaty on basically rebuilding Europe's steel industry. And that would have the governments work together. Off of that body, they began to transfer power to it so that when politicians left or lost office, if they had been good traders to France or Germany or England, they would then get a position on those corporate boards that were paid for by the big robber barons. And so from 47 with the Treaty of London, then in 56, they had the Treaty of Rome that really created the European Union, the European Economic Community. And then in 2000, they just suddenly announced, we're the EU, yay, and fireworks. And the countries, none of them voted to enter it. And so they finally went, well, then let's vote to get out. That was the Brexit, and they're still trying to get the face sucker off. But isn't that illustrative of how did Juncker, the grandson of the head Nazis, how is his dad was a top Nazi, how is Juncker suddenly running everything? Well, because he's a top Nazi, and that's what they do. They run things. Just like Soros. They're like, man, you killed thousands of your fellow Jews. You're a good guy. We're going to hire you to help run the New World Order. He's like, Hail Hydra. Because it was never about Hitler. It's all about power and pure evil. Oh, yeah. Bezos is the richest guy in the world. No, Juncker and people like him, no one knows, okay? But Juncker owns Luxembourg, the richest country per capita in the world, the most elite tax haven on the planet. Juncker owns it. Why? Because his grandfather had paratroopers jump in and take it over. So that's why he told Trump, we will defeat you a year ago. Well, guess what? You got your ass handed to you, smiley face. That big old buzzard nose you got sticking in our business. So here's the new article on newswars.com from them, that secret EU army we first reported on 10 years ago. They've made it public last year, and now they're announcing if you try to leave, we'll roll in. EU threatens force against countries refusing migrants. That's right. The EU says if you don't let the Muslim invaders come in, 80+% military-aged men will use force. They already are threatening $1 million to 100,000, 100,000 to €1 million fine if you don't accept military-aged men into your country who all seem to have their own Facebook accounts bragging about how many people they killed, sometimes posing with dead bodies or women they've captured who they're selling into slavery. Oh, yeah, it's in the news. Oh, you actually sold women into sex slavery and you're on tape executing people? Baby, we want you. And what's the Green Party say? They came out and they told the women in Cologne, a bunch of them got raped. The mayor, who's the Green Party head in that state, by the way, not just mayor, she said, don't wear short dresses, sweetheart. She said, don't wear short dresses and go around together in groups or wear rape bracelets. But more on the article, European globalists are preparing to force Central European nations to accept mandated migrant quotas and open borders, according to Hungarian Prime Minister. And then it goes on from there that he has been notified that they will just take control of his borders, which they've been saying they'll do. They've been threatening Italy. If Italy stops the Zodiac boats that George Soros funds publicly, bringing in thousands every few days into Italy, they said, we'll stop your ships.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Gonna hit me? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Oh, well," she cried, "I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the vicious snake. This could be the great Trojan horse of all time. Because you look at the migration, study it, look at it. Now they'll start infiltrating with women and children. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. Now she clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried. "But if I hadn't brought you in, by now you might have died." She stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. "I saved you," cried the woman, "and you've bit me, heavens wide. You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die." "Oh, shut up, silly woman," said the reptile with a grin. "You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in."
What do you think of our X2 true atomic iodine?
I want to tell you something about iodine that people don't realize. And 50% of the American population and Canadian population as well may be deficient in iodine. Iodine is a mineral. It's one of the elements in the periodic table. And you do not get this iodine from plants or from food because they produce it. They get it from the soil, and you, consuming the food, take the iodine. Iodine is essential to every cell development, especially in children. And iodine is concentrated in the gland where it filters the serum coming through your blood and extracts whatever iodine is present. If the iodine is not present in sufficient numbers, your thyroid gland has to work double time. In the extreme, it reaches the limit. So then the pituitary gland sends a thyroid growth hormone to it to make sure that it's bigger so it can process more serum and get more iodine from it. In the ultimate extreme, it's called goiter. It's a disease. And people don't realize that if you are short of iodine, if you're deficient, your cells will not mature properly, develop, and never mind radiation coming from Fukushima. But at the same time, iodine enables your cells to develop. And it's very important for muscular brain development. A lot of brain problems and breast cancer may be attributable to iodine deficiency.
And by the way, you can just search engine, mainstream news admits iodine deficiency on average 15 IQ point reductions, then fluoride added another 15. It's all admitted. This is a plan where they bomb us with the bad halogen that our thyroid then uses, and it basically then gives us the swollen thyroid.